Hello, everybody. Welcome to your very favorite Spider-Man podcast. Here comes the Spider-Cast, subtitled Ka-Zar Chronology this week, because we are going to be doing some Ka-Zar appearances. This is your co-host, Mike Allen. As always, I'm joined by...
Joshua Merville. That was super confusing. I thought for a second you said Quasar Chronology.
That's what I'm here for, right? To confuse the listeners.
Yeah, we're testing to make sure you guys are listening.
That's right.
Yeah, so today we're going to be reading some Ka-Zar comics with some Spidey crossovers in it from 1983. I believe it's March, April, and May of 1983.
That's right.
And we do have another special returning guest.
G.I. Jolie.
I mean, I feel like at this point you're just another co-host. You're a regular.
It's when I want to. Dang it.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, Mike is just checking to see if anyone's listening to either worry or confuse us. Honestly, hoy. When I saw that it was from the email that we're doing Ka-Zar, I was like, excuse you? Why?
Have you ever heard of Ka-Zar before today, Jolie?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can't be certain.
Didn't we read a couple of Ka-Zars before?
Yeah, we did. Just you and I, Josh.
It was okay.
No one wanted to be on that episode. But
yeah,
anyway,
no, that's fair.
Well, I mean, I wasn't asked, but I remember Shanna, so that's why I'm saying I don't know.
Right. Okay.
I had to know somehow because her name was familiar. So.
So. Yeah. I'm going to take a page from Mike Dell and give a quick history of Ka-Zar, like the 5-second history. This version of Ka-Zar is Kevin Plundar. He first appeared in X-Men number 10 in March 65. But he is actually based on a previous version of Ka-Zar that appeared before that in Marvel Comics number 1. And his name was David Rand. Okay, so Marvel Comics number 1 was the first appearance of the Human Torch, the second appearance of the Submariner. But here's the crazy thing, okay, people used to think Human Torch was Marvel's first superhero. Then they thought it was, I've always said it's Submariner. But technically speaking, Ka-Zar, the original version of Ka-Zar, David Rand, appeared before Marvel Comics number 1 in pulp magazines in October 1936. So if you go by that standard, this is really Marvel's oldest hero. That being said, it has nothing to do with the quality of these comics. But not to say they're bad. What is the
definition of hero, though? Like,
let's put it this way. I believe so. The first comic book that Marvel published was Marvel Comics number 1 in 1939. That was the first appearance of Human Torch, the original Angel, a bunch of other different characters. But Submariner had already appeared in a giveaway comic called Motion Picture Funnies number 1, so that's why people consider the Submariner Marvel's first superhero. But technically, Ka-Zar predates even that, so you could argue that Ka-Zar is Marvel's oldest character, even though he wasn't actually in the comics. He's from the pulp magazines, you know?
Gotcha.
Yeah, I guess what I mean is, like, do you mean costumed heroes? Like, do they mean somebody who has altered abilities in what they call now a meta human? Well, like that's what I mean. Not.
I don't know. You're right. Ka-Zar is definitely not a traditional superhero. He just happens to be a character that appeared in Marvel Comics, so therefore he's grouped together with other superheroes. But really, he's just a pulp hero or a pulp character. Like he's just a Tarzan ripoff, really, right?
Yeah, and I guess I would like, and that's the thing for me is that I wouldn't necessarily consider somebody or a character like Tarzan to be a superhero because it kind of walks this like fun line of fantasy.
Right.
Which they blend now, so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and you could even extend it further by saying that, I mean, Marvel has published comics about Dracula, and no one considers Dracula the first Marvel superhero, right?
Correct.
So, yeah, by that definition, you're right. It still is Submariner and Human Torch then. But anyway. So now we're going to talk about Ka-Zar The Savage, number 24. So Josh and I have already reviewed 2 issues leading up to this. And to be honest, we were both I think we were impressed with the abilities of the writer. I think more so than the actual story itself. At least that's my take. What did you think, Josh?
Yeah, pretty much. There were some interesting things going on. I think that I think so far the Savage Land characters don't, like, up until now they haven't really blended too well in New York. And I think that's where a lot of the trouble comes, I think, from this. There was also a little bit of like weird plot development going on with characters just dying, but I mean, we'll get to that in this story.
It's, I got a lot to say, but I think what it comes down to is, how they say, like, people sometimes will say, well, I don't like this character and I don't like that character, and then I will always counteract that with, it's never the character, it's always the writer. A good writer can make any character good. Well, I'm going to revise my theory because it's not that I think Ka-Zar's a bad character, but as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, you know what? Bruce Jones is a good writer, but I don't give a shit about this scenario or this situation or this setup or anything. And I don't know if it's Bruce Jones' fault or if it's whoever created the original Ka-Zar's fault, but maybe this is just an outdated concept, but it doesn't really do anything for me. Josh, what do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely not my favorite. I think that it's a weird choice to have it set in like the comics continuity at this time, and like having it set in New York, I think is a strange thing that they decided to do, and then also having Peter in the story, but mostly just as Peter and not as Spider-Man. I feel like there's something there. It just doesn't ever fully, like,
gel?
Flesh out. Yeah, it doesn't gel.
Well, okay, now, just to give a quick summary of the story leading up to this for the G.I. Joe Lee and for the listeners, to make a very convoluted long story short, Ka-Zar gets shot by Kraven the Hunter, right?
No, he's fighting Kraven the Hunter, and then this girl, Ramona, is the one that snipes him from the top of a building, and and Spider-Man just happens to be swinging by, saves him. Kraven kind of just runs away, and then Ka-Zar dies.
Yeah.
And immediately Shanna starts. Is it Shanna or Shayna?
Shauna. I think Shauna.
Shanna immediately starts like making out with Peter Parker.
As one does, yeah.
Because she's mourning so bad, she's like attracted to Peter Parker. I think that's a huge problem. Shanna, I think, is the most glaring problem in all of these comics that we've read, all of these Ka-Zar comics. They don't know how to write women. Like they don't understand that women are more than just like emotional.
Just hysteria and mental. What is it? Instability.
Yeah, like this is the second character they're giving schizophrenia to. What is happening? Like,
yep,
I know.
It's wild. It doesn't make any sense. Like, if you want to develop a story where Shauna, thinks that Ka-Zar is dead, and then she falls for somebody else, and then when he comes back, you have that like drama of the three of them. That's fine, sure, but to have her make her lose her mind in order for that to work makes zero sense. Why is this happening?
No, I know. But here's the other thing is, I used to be a big fan of the show Arrow, and in the first 2 seasons of Arrow, the writing was pretty good, okay? And then it jumped the shark. And one of the things that made it jump the shark, and spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen the show, but a character on the show dies, okay? And then for the next 6 months, 3 or 4 of the characters pretend that woman is alive just because they're scared of what the reaction of her father will be. That is so fucking stupid that you're watching this show that has $1 million budget per episode, where the lighting is perfect and the sound is perfect and the editing is perfect and the writing is that of like a 13-year-old, not even a 13-year-old do that. And that is what I felt in this comic, with the way that everything twisted and turned, with like Ka-Zar's dead. Well, actually he's alive. Oh, but he's alive, but we can't tell her. And it's I don't know. I do think Bruce Jones is a good writer, because his prose and his dialogue is good, but the actual plotting in this story is off the charts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just think it's ridiculous.
I think another reason why it doesn't work is because we know what's going on, so it just seems like the characters are being stupid, like Peter and Shanna. Like, I don't know. It just seems a little ridiculous. Maybe they could have had like an issue where you see her and Peter dealing with it, and then Ka-Zar shows up out of the blue like he does in this story arc, and like surprises Spider-Man, and then like the next issue is just like a flashback issue of what happened before to Ka-Zar. Right, you can just tell that story out of order to keep that like suspense. This just doesn't work. Everything feels like mushed together. Characters are just doing things because, again, the story needs them to go in that direction.
Right.
I think that the strong points overall in this is I really like AIM. I really like Ramona in this. I think that she's kind of a strong antagonist, where she's not like a full-on like mustache twirling supervillain, but she's like, not totally a good guy either. And she's we do find out that she's using Ka-Zar and has like implanted this chip into his head to control him, and like if he gets out of line, she can use it to like electrocute him, I think it is, or like shock him. And yeah, she's like really like manipulative and fun and a little bit deeper. And I don't know, maybe she just seems so deep because all of the other characters are shallow.
Right.
But AIM I think was my favorite part of this. I think that like getting rid of Spider-Man could have really helped in this scenario, and just have it like Tarzan story where it's a fish out of water. He's trying to like deal with things here, and while like having the like. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, but then if Spidey wasn't in it, we couldn't review it on Here Comes the Spider-Cast.
Yeah, that's true.
Which might be a good thing.
Yeah. I feel like we're not even going to have a whole lot to say about Peter Parker in this.
Well, here's the thing. First, let's get back to format, because we summarize the plot. Yeah. And God forbid I can remember what happened in this first issue here, number 24, but I will attempt to summarize it. And one of the things I noticed when I started reading this issue is I felt like I was missing a chapter, and sure enough I was, because number 23 does not have Spider-Man in it, and so it was not included in our list of Spidey appearances. So I told Josh, if you want to understand what's going on, you should probably read the issue in between. I'm not sure if you did, Josh.
No.
Okay.
No, I did not.
They sum it up in like the issue 25. I think they kind of like talk about what happens, so it's not a complete mystery.
Yeah, and because I have context from the stories we read last time, I felt like I was okay to just jump in, and I really didn't want to go back to read another comic, so I was like,
well, all I think
I'm done with the story.
Yeah, I don't need to tell you the plot, but I can just tell you that the way that number 23 starts off is Ka-Zar's already alive, and he's already in Africa or in Casablanca. And it's just like, even that issue feels like you're missing a chapter, So they kind of just throw you in. So it doesn't really help much. But yeah, even this issue, we're kind of jumping into the middle of action. Ka-Zar is in the desert near Casablanca, and he's getting shot at. He's on this mission. And basically, this is Ramona, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Ramona is using him to go on this mission for AIM. And the whole point of this mission is to get
these plants. So they're trying to get these plants because the scientist has found a way to turn them into explosives. So it's like a cheap, easy way to get these get explosives and make like weapons for the army or to use for a war, and it's also easy to harvest as well. So
right. So that scene is just basically just them fighting, shooting, flashing, backing. And then we cut over back to New York, and we've got this weird situation where Peter Parker, who is concurrently also dating, I believe this is when he was still with Deborah Whitman, right?
Yep.
Because I think he mentions her.
Well, no, it's
somebody.
no. It's 1983, which means he's still with Black Cat.
Black Canary.
Oh, Black Cat, right?
And she's still in the hospital.
She's still in the hospital. Well, what's he to do? What's he to do? She keeps going back into ICU. The writers keep putting her,
right,
putting her in critical care.
So this is just so weird. He's on it's also like I don't know. Like I said, Bruce Jones is a good writer, but this is not the Peter Parker that we all know and love. Like, he's just acting like a different person. So again, it's so awkwardly written. They come out of a movie theater. She doesn't even remember what the movie's about. So, and then right away, what does she want to do? She wants to go see Ka-Zar, which I didn't realize this is where they were going to go. But this is what is this called technically?
The morgue.
A morgue. Well, it's a morgue. You're right. Yeah, I guess it's not a tomb. It's a morgue. So yeah, he's still in the morgue and blah blah blah. But then they cut over and we find out not only is he taking her on dates to the movies, she's been sleeping at his apartment. It's just so bizarre to think that in between all this, he's juggling the Black Cat and probably Deborah Whitman a little bit, and probably that Amy girl. Like,
I will say that the one good thing about this, I don't think that they ever have any romantic involvement in the 3 issues we're talking about today. I think they're even sleeping in they're even sleeping in separate beds in this issue.
Oh, are they? I thought they were true.
But
they're in separate beds.
But previous issue they were dating, and they had this awful sexual tension going on where they're making out and shit. It's not good. So because I have context for that, it makes this still feel kind of icky and weird.
Right. So yeah, it's basically just this weird thing where she's still obsessed with Ka-Zar. Peter is trying to get her to forget about him. And then we cut back to the mission in Casablanca with Ka-Zar and ZABU. And it's just, back and forth. Not really much going on. Just kind of action and chasing the MacGuffin type thing, right? And then Ka-Zar ends up in this headquarters of, what's his name? Is it Baron von Strucker? I don't even know who this is. I can't remember. I read this a day ago, and it's already
I think it was.
Yeah.
It's just as memorable as the plot of that crappy movie Peter took her to.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it's funny because you said that we weren't going to have much to talk about. And even though there is stuff going on, it's not. It's really just action, right? Fighting. And then pretty much this issue ends on a cliffhanger where Ka-Zar's even though you have the ability to kill me with this thing in my head, I don't care. I'm just going to walk away. And that's pretty much the cliffhanger. So I will quickly point out the writer is again Bruce Jones, who, decent writer. The artist is actually Bob Hall, who Jolie and I interviewed at the Michigan Comic-Con. Really nice guy. Artist, most famous for Squadron Supreme and Shadow Man for Valiant. Let's just start. We've already touched on the story. Let's just talk about the art. Josh,
just for this one issue?
Well, we're just going to talk about this issue Bob Hall. Compared to Ron Frenz's art in the last couple issues, Josh, what'd you think of this art?
It's been a little while. I can't remember. I can't quite remember.
Okay.
But I did like this art in this issue. I think that for this story that they're telling, it really fits. It kind of has that more maybe more on the realistic rather than the poppy classic comic book feel. It's right. Maybe a little bit more gritty. There's also a couple of panels where there's some close-ups of faces, and they're extremely detailed. I think it's Schreiber, not Baron von Strucker. Now that I'm looking at his face.
There you go.
There's this one panel where it's extremely detailed. It's almost photorealistic face. It kind of pops out, and stands out. It doesn't fit with the art, but I kind of liked it. It made it it made that panel pop out, and you really get the emotion, and and like that really stood out on the page.
Right.
It kind of at times felt like how in like some SpongeBob episodes they cut to like the realistic like painting of the character, and it's usually like grotesque and like hyper realistic. But I don't know, it kind of worked for this because it was always when like something was happening. Like the one I'm thinking of, I don't have the page number. It's after Schreiber has them in his helicopter. He's doing like this like, haha, I've jammed it. I'm so delighted that you dropped in, Ka-Zar. It's like this like realistic drawing, and he's got his hands like splayed, and they're like pointing at the the reader. It's fun. So I like the art in this one.
G.I. Julie, what did you think of this art?
Oh my god. Did he draw the women?
Yeah, there's some cheesecake art in here for sure, eh?
It's all cheesecake art.
Mm-hmm.
It's do you know what? He's a good artist, but it's all cheesecake. Like, I'm sorry, but there's no human in the world that looks like Ka-Zar.
Right.
Unless you're at like a fitness competition where they have been like water fasting, and
right.
You know what I mean? Like the human body at rest, even if it were that muscular, would not show you that much muscle.
Right.
It's just it's like ridiculous how overdrawn and exaggerated the anatomy is. But I will give him the fact that the poses are dynamic, which is nice. There's a lot of action. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's also just a lot of inaccuracies that can't be forgiven.
Right.
Excuse me. I don't know if he did the pinup at the front.
Yeah.
But that right foot is not
Yeah,
a right
I was going to say
foot.
both of them are really bad.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure if he did the pinup. Yeah. Here's the thing. My impression of this art is that it's inconsistent. Like, there's some good panels, some bad panels. There's some experimentation. Like, I like the shot on page Digital 8 when they're walking down the street and Peter's shadow is Spider-Man and she's kind of in the foreground.
Right.
I like that. You know, it's not great, but it kind of reminds me... It's just the kind of thing you'd see more in indie comic when an artist is sort of trying to find his style before he settles into any one style. He's just trying different tricks, you know, which I thought that was pretty cool. But the one thing I want to point out is that this art is inked by Armando Gil,
right?
Who also drew the cover, and the cover is actually pretty good. The cover is really good, actually.
He did the art underneath the ink too.
No, on the cover he did it he did the cover on his own.
Okay, so yes, he did.
So yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. I was gonna say, like, it looks way different.
It's way better.
I think that a lot of the problems with the art maybe possibly comes from the inking. I think that there's definitely a lot of parts that are over inked because, like what you were saying with Ka-Zar, not like nobody looks like that. I think that it's just a matter of over inking because Peter looks the exact same, and then even later on, I think they're jumping. Yeah, Ka-Zar's jumping and like grabbing onto the leg of the helicopter, and his hands are even like way over inked and look like they have muscles, and like you can see the veins popping out. Like it's just. Yeah, so I wonder how much of that is like over inking and just like too many like sketchy lines to make it detailed and like give it more depth, where I think maybe even less would work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like it's clear that you like. I'm just looking at the page where Peter Parker and Shanna are coming out of the movie theater. Oh no, they can't. They went to see E.T. That's not unmemorable at all.
What a
that's very memorable. Yeah. Anyway, girl, your mind must be somewhere. But hey, if someone's dead and in a morgue and you've been at it like this for a week, I wouldn't want to go see a movie either. Anyway, that's besides the point. So your point about the over inking, I think is true, because if you look at her face in the first panel where they come out of the movie theater, and he's like saying her name to get her attention, you can tell when two artist styles don't mix, because the inker, and this is why I never understood why you would ink anyone's work that isn't your own, especially if you draw noses different. And it's clear that these two have a different approach to that part of the face, because it's inked differently. Like,
that's a good point.
It's inked very strangely for a nose. And if you look at the noses on the cover, this guy draws because he knows how he's going to ink it. So they're the shadows in the right place, but it's like he's misinterpreting the shadows of the penciler. So I don't know, maybe it's just like a fault of the media, or it's just like a fallacy of the media. It's not really a fault, but the whole nature of comics, and that it's like there's a penciler and an inker. Like, why? I get that you want to save time, but and not every penciler is going to be a great inker, and not every inker is an artist. But then you get things like that are really annoying.
Right.
Right.
Like artists, different interpretations. One will take liberty, and it's almost inevitably the inker who will, and they really have to be a good artist.
Yeah. I think it's a key of matching two good artists together that work well together.
Yeah, I mean, if we were talking about Jack Kirby and Joe Sinnott, like, they're like a match made in heaven, you know, but it doesn't always work that way, unfortunately, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's my impression of this art. Is it just doesn't gel. It doesn't look like classic comic book art, and it certainly doesn't gel. That's my impression of it.
I'm okay with it not looking like classic comic book art, because this is not a classic comic book story. Like, it didn't feel like even a superhero story. It didn't feel like it felt very different from what we're normally reading. So the fact that the art was different, I kind of welcomed. I enjoyed not that it was perfect by any means, but I kind of enjoyed the art paired with this story.
Yeah, it's not bad. Yeah,
because I honestly, honest to God, didn't get that was Peter.
Right.
Because that it was Spider-Man. So I was like, okay, cool. We're reading Ka-Zar, so like Spider-Man's got to come in here somewhere, and it didn't really click until they left the morgue and the caption said Peter Parker's full name. I was like, oh, this is supposed to be Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Oh, that's how he's involved. Shanna is staying in his New York apartment. Weird. Okay. Maybe this is like an Avengers thing. And then he started talking about her looks. And I was like, okay, cool. So no matter what woman you introduce, it's always like in a romantic scenario. Like, even the way that, like, okay, so she can't sleep, or she sleepwalks, and she's still so driven by the idea that she's no longer with her soulmate, Ka-Zar. So she walks out the window. She sleepwalks out the window, and just the way that it's rendered is like crazy, like a crazy soap opera. Well, the way it's dialogued, the way it's drawn, with her, like when he catches her, weirdly,
right?
And then there's two panels of him just carrying her through an open window in the moonlight, and then he lays her down, and it's just like a full body glamour shot,
right
that you would sort of see in like an editorial in a magazine. And that's kind of how she's rendered, with like a barely nipple.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, this is not weird at all in the middle of a freaking in the middle of a comic book. And it's like, it's just, something's really wrong with this girl. ever since she took that fall at Cortland's apartment, she's been acting stranger and stranger. Really, buddy? For a week, you didn't notice that she's... Hello? She thinks that her partner in crime is dead. The love of her life. Of course she's acting weird, you stupid child. Like, I don't understand why they keep writing Peter Parker as if he's like this 12-year-old idiot. And that's why I just can't get behind him sometimes, because he's just like driven by his dick and like, oh God, sorry.
Well, it's okay to be young, but it's like, this isn't Peter Parker. Like, he's not in character. That's the problem, right?
Well, I mean, up until even now, with all the stuff that happens with the ladies, this is very in character for Peter, as far as I've read, when it comes to women. And it's like, of course, he gets a side story where he's babysitting the girl, the lover. But why does it have to be a romance side story? Like a potential romance? Like, that's what's kind of like jarring for me. Like, why can't it be like I believe you? It is weird that the doctor didn't come in.
Yeah.
What are we going to say, Josh?
I think it could possibly be, too, because the audience is Peter Parker, always, and they're trying to... Not that this is a bad thing. I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just saying, like, I think that the reason why they always... introduce the bombshells as Peter Parker's love interest is because the readers are gonna eat it up, and it sucks.
Right? Yeah.
I hate it so much because Peter's not supposed to be a ladies' man. Like,
right.
He was never like the super attractive dude, right? Like, he was just the average Joe. He was kind of not super great with the ladies. Even after Peter Parker, like, even after he became Spider-Man, he still wasn't great with them. Like, yeah, he had love interest, but they weren't fawning over him. Like, not every girl fell in love with him when they walked into the same room as him. Like, it's getting ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate that they write him that way.
Yeah.
It's like, the moment a woman does come into the picture, it isn't just platonic. It can't be. And it's sad for that character. It's sad for his character, because he's like, you know, like, even in the caption, tonight sleep covers him like a heavy blanket until, and then boom, bitch gets in the way. Like, I know that these comics were made for people who lived in a different time than I did. Unfortunately, like, I don't know. I just, because and I will point this out about Ramona, because Josh, you said you liked her before, and admittedly, I liked her in the beginning too. But she becomes she gets objectified as well. She ends up.
That's very true. Yeah.
Not that she gets objectified. Her evil, what makes her interesting, her evil becomes motivated by her love for Ka-Zar. And her obsession to possess him in possess him like carnally eventually. She makes that very clear. She's like, oh no, this isn't about love, it's about infatuation.
Yeah.
It's like, excuse me? She can't just be evil and power hungry. It needs to be because she wants Ka-Zar. Like, makes no sense.
No.
Yeah. I mean, spoiler alert for episode 3. I mean, issue 3 that we're gonna talk about, but like, Jesus Christ, excuse me.
So we've kind of already talked about the story. Is there anything else to say about this story, or is that it?
No, not this one. I don't think so. Like, I feel like I have more to say about the issue as a whole, so I'd rather just kind of like power through talking about each one, and then we can chat about like final thoughts afterwards, because I feel like, for the most part, my feelings are almost consistent throughout about what I feel about each one. I think this one is maybe the strongest of the 3, but not by much.
No. Okay. Go ahead, Julie.
That ZABU's really cool. At first, just because the way that the word bubbles were, I thought that he talked. I thought that he was a talking saber-toothed tiger because Ka-Zar even says, "Thanks for the tip, bud," and I'm like, wait, did the saber-toothed tiger talk? That wasn't Ramona.
I like the idea of ZABU. I just hate that he just shows up whenever it's convenient for him to be there.
Right.
That's my thing with him, is that he's gone when, oh, we can't have a big cat here. But when they're like, come on, ZABU, and ZABU's just there all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. Like, it happens a couple times. It's just, I don't know. I think maybe at that point I'm nitpicking a little bit too much when there's so many glaring problems with the story itself. I feel like that's more of just like a more of a continuity thing than anything.
Well, speaking of, okay, let's just jump to the next one then. Let's leave recommendations and all that to the end. So do you want to tell us, Josh, do you want to summarize the plot for the next issue, Ka-Zar the Savage 25?
Sure. So we meet up with Ka-Zar and Ramona, and Ka-Zar wants to go and see Shanna, and she uses the electric shock thing on him, so he kind of like is incapacitated and falls to the ground. We cut back to Peter and Shanna, and they're looking around at like Peter brings her to like a forest to try to make her more comfortable, and I mean,
I didn't think of that.
Did he crack a coconut open for her too?
Yeah, like it's.
Oh my god.
Not great. And then so we see after Ramona knocks Ka-Zar out, he's on a plane with ZABU tied up, and they're taking him on a mission. But he ends up jumping out of the plane with ZABU, and when he does, one of the canisters that's like made from the plant knocks over, and the plane explodes, and he lands back into I think the Hudson River. So Shanna goes crazy again. She runs into the hospital because she realizes that the doctor that said that he would watch over Ka-Zar was not there, and it was another doctor that said that Ka-Zar died. So even it just doesn't make sense to me because she's seen Ka-Zar's body, and there's nothing about Ka-Zar's body that, like, or at least they don't say that it's not him, right? So it's just strange that
it's just
that she's like, oh, whatever. So anyways, they go back to the morgue again, and they look at the body, and she starts going crazy. Peter Parker slaps her.
Of course.
You know.
Because that's how you deal with hysterical women.
Crazy, right. These crazy schizophrenia women are oh, I hate this. So ZABU eats a shark. Some sailors saved the two of them and scooped them up in a net. We cut back to the hospital, and Shauna's been committed because she's insane, and this is the only way that we can justify women having character arcs, is making them crazy. Spider-Man, we see Peter Parker don the Spider-Man costume for the first time. He's swinging through New York, and he goes back to his apartment, and Ka-Zar is there. Oh my god, he's alive. He gets a knock on the door or whatever, and he's distracted for a couple of seconds, and Ka-Zar sees the hospital room number for Shanna, and he jumps out the window, and he goes to the hospital to find her. Turns out that she had been moved a couple weeks ago, and that was an old note, so Peter Parker met him there, and they have a confrontation at the end, and it's left on a cliffhanger with the two of them jumping at each other, ready to battle.
An appropriate filler. Appropriate, not entertaining. But
I'll just say one thing. We're back to Ron Frenz on art, and I did find the art much more dynamic this issue. Personally, it's classic Marvel style, you know, and I think it's more complemented by the inks. You know, I just want to point that out. I think the quality of the art really came out when Peter Parker smacked her across the face. No, I'm kidding. That was ridiculous. But I want to point out this is not the last time someone strikes Shanna in the face.
I don't get it. I just don't.
Yeah.
What makes
is
you
going
think
on?
this is good? How do you come up with this?
Yeah, exactly.
How do you sell thousands of copies of this?
So yeah, really quickly, Jolie, what was your take on the art in this issue? Did you like it better, worse, the same?
The art is. I find that I'm so impartial to the art. I can't divorce the two anymore when the story goes on such strange tangents. But having to sit down and just look at the art and not have to read the words anymore, okay, I'm into it. Sure, the art's great, but it's not like super standout or anything.
Right.
I will say there is something about Peter Parker's look when he's in the hospital, just like casually leaning over Shauna's comatose body, catatonic body. There's just something so hip about what's happening there. The flow of the flow and the drape of that V-neck.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's also like the subtlety in the poses too. Like,
yeah,
between the first and the second panel, it's practically the same pose, but you can tell that he's like adjusted a little bit.
Right.
And you can really see the action going on.
And also, speaking of action, ZABU is a shark. Yes. ZABU is a saber-toothed tiger. Saber-toothed tiger is gigantic.
Mm.
Or so I'm led to believe by the bones they've left behind. So anyway, cool. He eats a shark. There's nothing to be afraid of. But I love the way that he has done this animal. ZABU looks cooler. There's more. There's less attention to there's more attention to the structure of what makes up figures than what is underneath that makes up figures, which is better in this case. So it's like it adds to the movement. Whenever I see so much muscle, it just serves to stiffen up poses.
Yep. Good point.
Because the idea, we all as human beings know that the only time we usually see muscle protrude is when we are tense. So to see muscle is almost to create tension for me, and that's why I have a hard time. Maybe that's why I've always had a hard time reading superhero comics, because I just know that what I'm looking at it can't be real, other than the fact that they're flying.
Yeah.
They're I realize that their bodies aren't real, but how can you solve crime or help, lowly citizens in trouble when you're tense like that all the time? But anyway, I will say yes. Long story short, the art is better. The art is much better.
It's funny. I just want to quickly point out, I think that's why I as I got older, I always thought Jim Lee's art looked really stiff and lifeless. It's because his characters are always at full muscle tension, and that's probably why it looks so stiff. Yeah.
I mean, take any figure drawing class and they'll invite anybody. The models that they invite vary in size, shape, and color. Usually they will bring a bodybuilder in so that when you're studying what musculature looks like and how skin and shade falls on top of that, you can experience it for yourself. And even when they flex, really flex, you don't get all those lines. So it's just so... It's entirely exaggerated and crazy. Yeah.
So yeah, we're just gonna jump right to the next issue then. Yeah, I mean, there's really not much to say about this chapter. So, G.I. Jolie, do you want to take the task of summarizing the next issue?
Sure. Okay. So issue number 26. So we're preparing for a fight between Spider-Man and Ka-Zar, because instead of being the friends that they should be and rationalize, like having a rational conversation about why Peter does not want Ka-Zar to see Shanna, because Peter has been told by a doctor that they have to wipe her memory to get her out of a catatonic state. In the last issue. Yes, this is just as ridiculous as the shark eating. So it's like, okay, sure. But Ka-Zar knows that AIM agents work inside the hospital, or they've been planted in the hospital. And he's like, no, absolutely not. I need to see Shanna right now. I don't care what it takes. You're not going to stop me, Spider-Man. You're crazy. They're friends. They just kicked, what's his name again?
Craven?
Yes, Craven.
Yeah. Spider-Man showed up, I think, after. No, Spider-Man did show up afterwards, but
okay.
I think they have met before. Because I think so they do know each other. I hate this. I hate these like this trope in any story where the characters don't just talk to each other. They don't say what's wrong or what's on their mind. They just do things. It's extremely annoying. He should have said something in the apartment. He shouldn't have even left to come here. Like,
yeah, exactly. And instead, in issue 23, they tell you in like one of those blurbs where it's like, oh, that happened in issue 23, that whatever issue that Shanna has once previously told Ka-Zar about Spider-Man, or that the secret identity is Peter Parker. But anyway, that doesn't matter, because they take a whole nother page to have Ka-Zar be like, oh my God, you don't know what I've gone through, Peter, to get through this. I fell out of a plane. I watched Ramona and her pal accidentally blow themselves up. My cat ate a shark. I was fished out of the water by Cheech and Chong. Like, I've been through some shit and now I'm here. And then Peter goes, oh, well, when you put it that way. Like, except for he doesn't. He continues to like be like, but that doesn't matter though. You still can't see her, and he doesn't tell her why. Right. Or so he doesn't tell Ka-Zar why. It's like, just tell Ka-Zar why. You can't let, like, Shanna can't see him, because the love of his life will go completely crazy again because her memory's been wiped. But anyway, so they have a fight. Eventually they see eye to eye, and they're like, no, buddy, we'll do this together. Right, friend? And it's like, wow, it took you 4 pages to do that.
I also love where that, like, he punches Spider-Man, and then he says, good punch, feel better now? Ka-Zar responds, as a matter of fact, I do. And Peter says, good. Yeah. Listen, it's not that I want to keep Shanna from you, but you don't know what's happened to her. And Ka-Zar finally says, so explain it to me already. It's like, what? If you wanted him to explain what was going on, maybe you should have just asked. And Spider-Man should have just been up front with him from the beginning. It's an unneeded, like, story element that just is annoying.
Yeah, and if lazy. It was meant to create camaraderie between the two characters, like, do you know what creates camaraderie between two characters? The fact that the reader just knows that they're both forces for good. It doesn't matter. He's been looking at, like, Peter has been looking after Shanna for a week. Ka-Zar knows this. He goes to get her. Like, how is that not the relationship built? Like, like, you could have spent 4 pages. Anyway, so they finally, like, mend their fences, go to the damn hospital. Jesus. It's take them honestly long enough. And then, because I think somewhere in there, Ka-Zar's like, well, I didn't tell you this before, but I'm telling you now. There are AIM agents in that hospital. And Peter's like, oh, shit. Maybe I should help. Maybe what that doctor told me about her going into crazy hysterics if she sees him again isn't true. Maybe I should help this dude out. So anyway, they find themselves crawling up the side.
he does say this. He says, so I wrote this down specifically in my notes. He says, but don't you understand? AIM has agents planted here. She could be in their hands. She might even be. And then Peter responds and says, if they do have her, then we'll face them together and get Shanna out of there. Now, when we do fast forward, when we do get to the point where they're fighting the AIM agents, I do remember Ka-Zar running in and punching some people, and then I remember Peter Parker doing nothing. I think he's swinging around. No, Peter didn't do anything. So that stood out to me as being hilarious.
Sloppy.
Like, even when he's Spider-Man, he doesn't have like a role in this story.
Right.
No, it's so weird. Like, he's gotten him to the hospital now, and it's not really like he doesn't really have anything to do. So it's like they go to the psych ward to rescue her. She's not in her padded cell, but excuse me, Ka-Zar hears her screaming, and he's like, "That's her. Get out of my way." She's in shock therapy. Weird. Where they are shocking her for some reason. Honestly,
they're doing experiments on her because they're AIM and they're evil.
Yeah. So one of the doctors like, well, Ramona said I could have her. So to make her temporary. I could use this patient for my experiments to make her temporary trauma and drug-induced psychosis permanent, and I intend to do just that. So they don't explain to us why. We just know that AIM is evil, and they're using psych ward patients to conduct human tests. Okay, cool, we got it. Well, Ka-Zar and Spider-Man bust in there, and
Ka-Zar
throws punches. Yeah, Spider-Man's just for the most part bouncing around.
Yeah.
Distracting people. Somehow, though, because all the AIM agents attack Ka-Zar, his shirt comes off.
Yeah.
And then let's see. Oh, Shanna passes out. She just not only was she catatonic before, she's been shocked, and now she's passed out. So they grab her, they snatch her, and then they run. But they have to make it through the crowd of like psych ward patients, like as if this was necessary. Like there's just like a really like what they I think assume is funny, where one of the patients is like grabs Spider-Man and is like, stop.
It was bad.
You're not fooling anybody. You're not Spider-Man. And Spider-Man, he's like, I'm Spider-Man. And then Spider-Man pushes him. And then that's the joke. It
just looks like a city street because it's kind of indefined, like the crowd, how big it is, and where they are. It's very confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then for some reason, the police, or maybe more AIM agents, because we all know that, some of those who burn crosses, they show up. And Spider-Man and Ka-Zar, because this is the only way that they could get up to the 10th floor, they rescale the building. D-scale? They
D-scale? Yeah, I don't know.
Scale, yeah.
But it's like, there are stairwells everywhere in a hospital. I don't understand. Anyway, so they get her back to where the fishmongers are that initially rescued ZABU and Ka-Zar out of the water, because he's like, no, he's got the same idea as Spider-Man. So I guess he was onto something, that Peter Parker, where he's like, if I just take her to things that she's familiar with, like palm trees and sand and like tropical heat, like if I could just get her on a boat and back to our island, she'll remember me and be fine. She's passed out this whole time. So he's like, Peter, can you get me back to where those fishermen are? So Peter does that. I don't know where, like, if the well, actually, if that one issue is to be correct, then there must be a marina off of the, what is it, the Hudson River?
Yeah, I think it's the Hudson.
Oh my
God.
Yeah,
Deb's dad works here too, I think.
Oh yeah.
At the fishery or at the Hudson?
At the fishery, I think,
docks.
right? At the docks, yeah.
Well, it's all just like coming together.
Well, yeah. What she asked, she says my dad, I think it's her dad or her uncle, whoever it was, is like, yeah, he's been getting beat up by some gang members. Could you talk to your friend Spider-Man and see if he'll go and help him? And Peter Parker says, I don't have time for that. And walks away. He does not go see her uncle until like 5 issues later or something. Like, he just takes his sweet ass time. He doesn't care.
Wow. Yeah. Oh my god. Well, I mean, he's not trying to immediately bone her, so
yeah,
he can put that one. He can bump that one off of the to-do list. So anyway, wherever their car is. Okay, let's just... sorry. Before we talk about the cutout, where ZABU is eating yet more fish, let's go on with the story. So the guy who owns the fishing boat sneaks them out of the fishery or to the dock. Oh, McConlin, he's going to take them to an airfield because... they can't get there by boat. They're going to get there by plane. So he's like, but you got to be quiet. So he hides them underneath all the fish. But like all hysterical women, when they wake up and see their beloved seemingly alive from a week of thinking that they're dead, she flies into hysterics and gives them away to the police.
Right. But the reason why that she thinks she's going crazy, though, is because she thinks he's alive. So why would she be scared and say, no, this isn't you, you're dead? The whole point is that she thinks he's alive.
Exactly.
It's so dumb.
It's so dumb. Because he assures her. It is me. Mm-hmm. It is me, baby. I'm here. But wait, I thought you, but no, I don't understand. I'm so confused. My poor female brain, so addled. So she freaks out so much that Ka-Zar knocks her out.
Yep.
He just lays her
punches
out.
Punches her in the face. It's
2
great.
issues
He's
in
like,
a row.
I really hate to do this, but let's just make your concussion worse.
Yeah, good point. Can I quickly
So they hijack a plane. Okay,
what's that?
TLDR.
I'll tell you later.
Oh, okay.
They hijack a plane. They get back to the island. He convinces her she's fine. And he passes out.
Oh.
And that's where it ends. Because ZABU went and got some guy named Blythe? B-U-I... I can't understand the lettering. B-L-I-T-H or
I think it's
B-U-T-H? Cool.
B-U-T-H.
Yeah,
so they introduce a new character while he's passed out, who calls him Lord Ka-Zar. And then the cliff hangs. And that's it. What are we talking about first? Jesus Christ.
Well, first, before we get to anything, I want to point out that I posted the 2 pictures of Shanna getting slapped and punched on a Facebook page. And one of the people commented, she was nuts the whole issue. I've done it before. Hitting someone really does get them out of how they're feeling. So, yeah. Anyway, just wanted to point that out that someone's advocating domestic abuse on a comic book Facebook page. But, we were really forgiving of the first couple issues of Ka-Zar that we read, but this has really taken a downturn, eh?
Ka-Zar, yeah.
Yeah, again, I think Bruce Jones is capable of good writing, but I really hated the plot in all 3 of these issues. Like, the way that Shanna is written is ridiculous. The way that Peter's written is off character. Ka-Zar is not much better. So yeah, I don't really have much to say about this whole storyline.
No, and I hope you left that comment up, that dirty, despicable comments that people know.
Oh yeah, I screen
capped
capped it.
Who's an abuser out there?
Yeah.
Great.
Oh God.
Anyway.
Yeah, this story is not great. Again, I honestly, for me, it kind of started out strong and then went downhill and downhill and downhill.
Right, I agree. I agree.
The first issue, I was kind of hopeful that I might enjoy like the full arc of this, and then the second issue, it just goes buck wild, and then by the third, it's like, what the hell is happening?
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think overall, this issue, this arc doesn't work. I think again, I stand by my thoughts of, I don't like when the Savage Land crosses over with New York. The fish out of water stuff, they just haven't been able to do it great. And maybe I would enjoy reading Ka-Zar if it stayed in the Savage Lands and it didn't come to New York to like be this weird Tarzan story.
Right. So you're saying if we were to start a weekly podcast called Ka-Zar Chronology, you would not be interested? Is that what you're saying?
If you and Jolie did, yeah, maybe I'd listen every once in a while.
You might listen to it. I've never. Ka-Zar is one of those characters who have never ever had the motivation to ever check out. Like, I read a couple issues written by Mark Waid, and even those were not great. So again, it goes back to the whole thing is he's not really a Marvel superhero. He's like a pulp hero that just happened to be turned into a Marvel character, and I've never been excited. Like when the X-Men go to the Savage Land, I never get excited. I'm not interested. I don't care. It just doesn't interest me, the whole setup, you know?
Yeah.
No, and you know what, to be honest, of everything that kind of happens in the genre, I'm like the least excited about things like Conan and like unless there's more sorcery involved in the sword part, I'm not really interested in it, like, you know, I don't know what it is. I don't prefer those kinds of adventures.
Right. It's not quite sword and sorcery, but it's related to that. Like, it's sort of related to fantasy and all that.
Yeah, it's like it's like sword and sorcery, and then there's like superheroes, and he's just in between. Like, not quite touching fantasy, but like not really touching superheroes either. So it's like this like pulp realm. And do you know, of all of the pulp things that I could like, adventures from humans like Conan, I guess, are like the least that I gravitate towards. Maybe I don't really like blondes. They're not my jam. None of my fave. Okay, so the reason why I know or am familiar with Shanna is because she had her own title. Shanna the She-Devil.
Right.
And it was... When was it? It had to have been the early 2000s. That's probably why I know of her only. So to find out that there's like just... that she didn't get a freaking saber-toothed tiger is kind of annoying. But sorry, while you were figuring that out, could you still hear us, Mike?
No, I had to run to the other room. Why?
Okay, I thought you were putting me on when you were like, I was telling Josh, I thought you were putting me on when you asked if I was familiar with Ka-Zar, because Ka-Zar is a clothing and accessory store in Poland.
Oh, and okay.
But I thought you were setting me up to talk about shoes and blouses.
No. That's just like, remember a couple years ago when I told Tim Gerard that I'd never ever heard of the name brand. What is it, UGG? Or what is it?
Really?
UGG?
Yeah.
Uggs,
Never
yeah.
heard of it. Never heard of it.
But you'd seen the boots.
I've seen them maybe, but I couldn't pick them out in a crowd. No way.
You had to have been able to pick them out in the crowd. They don't look like anything else.
Yeah, I don't look like I don't. It's just like I can't tell cars, right? I can't identify any car.
No, I guarantee you can tell because they're the. Remember when everyone started wearing boots that look like slippers?
Kind of, not really.
Well, those slippers are them. It's just
What?
a shitty slipper, pretty much.
I don't know. I would challenge that I couldn't because I can't identify a single car that's been made in the last 30 years. So.
No, but this is like an out of place sort of thing.
Oh, maybe.
Like it just looks terribly not warm. So why would anyone wear them in the dead of winter? And it was super fashionable for girls to wear these things. And suddenly they went from super sensible, like high-topped, like waterproof boots to these Sherpa shoes. That, like, you know, like they're not supposed to really get wet except for you're in the snow with them, which is water. It's just dumb. Anyway, we're also talking about the popularity of this character.
Ka-Zar?
Yeah, like Google. Like Josh literally Googled which Ka-Zar comics are good.
And there's none?
Well, the comics that we just read came up.
And what did they say?
So,
Oh God.
Let me guess. It's considered the best Ka-Zar comics ever written.
okay, let's see. Do a Generation one shot called blah, blah. Oh, so it kind of goes through like the entire arc of like 83. It looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Ron, writer Bruce Jones. Being loose in the city allows for some comedy. Very funny. Then we see Spider-Man. Easily the best Ka-Zar story Marvel has published up to this date, and not just because it incorporates Marvel Universe characters. Shanna is still a little bit of a girl, but she gets a solo adventure and is a major part of the action, as is ZABU. So fantastic. This is the best that Ka-Zar has to offer.
You know, I've heard other people say that the Bruce Jones run is the best Ka-Zar era. So unfortunately, this is probably as good as he gets.
Machi.
Okay,
That's not good.
Okay, so I want to get back to the episode because now we just pretty much have to wrap it up, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I just have to make a note. 1 second here. What?
Nothing. I don't even remember where we left off. Like, what could we possibly have said?
Well, there's not much to say other than I'm going to say I certainly do not recommend this. I mean, if you have to read a Ka-Zar story, maybe, but other than that, I don't think it's a good comic. None of these are. Josh, what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't like that he's not like in the Savage Land. It feels really out of place that he's here in New York. It doesn't fit too well in this story. Possibly with context and seeing him first arrive in New York and having the fish out of water stuff at the beginning and then seeing them get used to it, it might make more sense. But being thrown into it, I feel a little bit lost and not a huge fan of it, so I don't think I would recommend it.
Yeah, I can't recommend it either. Usually there's some kind of like lurid fantasy someone's trying to fulfill by incorporating Fabio into comics like this, and it's just like I can't even make connections. I can't make any connections. And usually pulpy fun appeals to me in like in a garbage queen, hey Becca kind of way, and this doesn't at all. It just is disturbingly bad, and I can't condone violence against women. I can't condone the objectification of women. I can't condone like the mistreatment of animals or the mistreatment of Spider-Man. Or it's weird. It's just so weird. And there are no dinosaurs, so I don't want it.
Yeah, I also hate the lazy excuses that they have for like
Fighting?
Not like for fighting, but I mean on the writer's side of like what's their excuse for not being able to write a story with a competent woman? I hate it so much. This isn't the 60s. This is the middle of the 80s, and they're still the only thing that they have for women are emotional and crazy.
Right.
They're nuts.
Do you know what really? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I hate it.
What?
I just gotta make sure I know what issue it is. It's issue 2. Sorry, 24. So they can't explain to us why women are treated this way, why men don't know how to talk to each other, and think rationally, especially when they're a savage. But they do have the wherewithal, however, to trot out the letterer.
Yeah.
The letterer who is Asian, who is differently abled, who they're painting as someone who feels left out of the praise for what makes a comic book a comic book. So they're not stupid. I don't know what they're trying to do here at all.
No. Well, also, I believe number 24, the editor was Louise Jones, who's famous for editing the X-Men and then eventually taking over X Factor, New Mutants. She's one of the biggest writers of the 80s. So she was around, and then she was gone by 25, and then now it's just being edited by Danny Fingeroff. Yeah, so maybe there was no women around to be like, what in the hell are you thinking with this story?
Yeah.
Yeah.
God. It just includes the abuse of women in so many forms that I can't forgive it.
Yeah.
I will pretend that it apologized. I just can't see past any of this to validate anything that happened. Even the coloring, though it was good, it's part of the package, and I just can't. It's just like, throw this right out the window. I can't believe people are defending this garbage. I'm shocked.
Well, I'm even more shocked people are defending domestic abuse in a public forum, nonetheless, but okay. I guess at least I said at least we have evidence for the inevitable restraining order, but whatever. You do you. Okay, so yeah, next week we are back to our regularly scheduled batch of monthly Spidey comics from the 80s, and we will have a returning guest in the form of our pal Chad from Michigan. So,
What?
Yep, he's coming back. So hopefully, G.I. Jolie, if you're available, you can also join us. It's going to be another fun one.
Of course I'm available.
Yep. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. Josh, you can take it from here.
Yeah, we want to thank you guys for listening. It really helps when you guys leave a review over on Apple Podcast, or drop us a tweet over at HCT Spidercast, or at Comic Syndicate on Twitter. You can find us at the Comic Book Syndicate pretty much anywhere else. Please keep in touch because we want to keep that conversation going.
That's right. So until next Monday, this has been Here Comes the Spider Cast.
All right, see you then.